Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com and welcome to our next video in this Django React build. So basically the first video we set up our project, the second video we deployed it. Now we need to actually build the API for our back end. Now let's give you a little tour here. So essentially in your project folder, so you have a project called To-Do, so inside there should be a To-Do folder. And this To-Do folder is essentially your main folder. So settings, again, that's going to be where all your settings are. We will do more stuff there. WSGI, that's just that thing that helps deploy. You never have to really touch this. Same thing with ASGI, that you just never have to touch those. So really the only files in here we really need to deal with is settings, which has all the settings, and URLs, which list all the URLs in your project, which right now there are none. So that's where we're at the moment. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Django app. So this is going to be, so before we created a new project, now every project can be made up of several apps. This is like sort of like the one sort of really killer feature of Django. If it wasn't for this, this is the one thing that makes me consider it among the other ones, because I find things like Ruby on Rails and Express a bit easier to use. Like a lot of things are just easier. And then when it comes to Python, things like Flask, Fast API, and Masonite are easier and more modern feeling. But Django is the only MVC framework that I know that's modular in this manner, where you can create different parts of your application as apps, and you can actually literally just drag an app. If you build it right, you can just take one app from one Django project and plop it in another project, and that way you don't have to necessarily rebuild certain feature sets, which can be pretty cool. Like there used to be this Django-based CMS called what was it called? It was called Mezzanine. And so I created a new blog using Mezzanine as a CMS, but I was able to add a podcasting feature by using some other Django app that someone else created for podcasting. Just plopped it in there, ran the migrations, and it was working. I didn't have to really do much in the way of configuring myself. So that's pretty cool. But how do I create a new app? I do Django admin, and then we're going to do start app, and then we're going to call this to do because we're creating a to do app. Oh, that's right, we'll call it API. So let's do that because it's already called, the app's already called to do, so we'll call this the API. And there's a new folder that's going to be our app there, and see this app comes with several different pieces. Okay, this init.py doesn't really matter. This is just something there to help it, the different folders to discover each other as modules. Admin, this is going to be more important if you decide to use the admin panel. We're not going to really worry about this. Apps, this is going to be how we connect this app to our project. So right now it's just a folder. Like this, our project has no idea that this folder exists. We're going to connect it to that apps file, and that's how it's going to work. Models, this is where we're going to define like what a to-do is. And then here we're going to define what we call views. Now in other frameworks, you would refer to these as controllers, or functions that decide what happens when a certain route happens. So whenever you think of views in Django, it's really just like controllers in every other framework. Once you see that, it's a lot easier to think through what's going on here. These are just functions that get run when certain URLs are hit. And then you would connect URLs here to different views, which in every other framework you'd be connecting different routes. So these would be called routes, and you'd be connecting them to different controllers. But otherwise, the principle is the same. You're just saying, hey, when this URL is hit, run this function. Cool. So first, let's connect the app. So let's go back to do settings. We have to go. This is where settings becomes important. So all apps that are connected to our particular Django app has to be listed here. So we want to list, which will be API dot apps, and let's actually take a look here. Dot API config. That's what you want to do. So it's like go in the API folder, go into the apps file, and install the API config. And that's going to be the, and I use backticks. That's not, Python doesn't like that. Oh, JavaScript habits. There we go. Cool. So now this can detect this application. Okay. So the next step is what we got to do is define our model. Like, what is a to-do? Okay. And basically what we do, it should be something like we create a new class to do, and this has to inherit from models. So it's like models dot model. Okay. And this is how Django knows that this is going to be one of the models it needs to generate like a migration for. Okay, and then we're going to keep this real simple. It's just going to have item. So we create a property called item, which is going to be models dot car field. Okay, I forget, it's like max size equals 30. Okay, let me just, I always forget that particular property, so it's just, but basically we were just saying that this is a text field. There's a models.car field, models.integer field, models.boolean field. You know, there's a whole bunch of them. You can read about them in the Django documentation. But let's see here. Here's just what I need. It's max length. Okay. I knew something that didn't feel right about that. Okay. So we're just saying, hey, you can have a to-do that has a maximum of 30 characters, so they got to be pretty brief. And that's it. I created my model. Ta-da! Now, my database still doesn't know about this model. That's what migrations do. A migration is going to give the directions or on how to create a table to hold this information in your database. So first thing we got to do is we got to actually make the migration. So Django, well, actually that's going to be Python manage.py, and then it's make migrations. So what this is going to do is that Django is going to look through all your apps and look for any models that haven't been migrated yet. And if it sees a model that hasn't been migrated yet, it generates a migration. This is actually a nice feature, because in most other frameworks, you generate the migration file yourself. Like, there's commands you can put in there to kind of help scaffold it out, but you don't have anything that kind of like does this sort of like sweeping, like, is there any unmigrated models? So that's another really cool sort of like more Django specific feature. And see, it notices the to-do model has not yet been migrated in any previous migration, so it picks up on it and creates a migration for that. Okay, let me just think, where did those migration files? Yeah, it goes and see in this folder right here, migrations. It created the migration file. And see, this file right here just basically says how to create, is the directions on how to create that table in the database. You don't need to touch that. And now that that's created, we can now migrate. So that'd be Python manage.py migrate. Okay, now, ta-da, that's been migrated. Okay, cool. So that's all well and good. So if I think we can do Python manage.py console. I think this is a command. Let's see here. Let's do manage.py help to see what the list of commands are. I always forget the different run server. We're going to be using that later to run server. Test server, squash. That's not what I'm looking for. Make migrations. Let's see. Change password. Move scale content types. Check compile messages. Create table. That's to go to your database shell. So if you want to actually go inside the SQLite3 shell, that's all fine and good. Okay, maybe it's shell. I'm going to assume it's going to be the command. Let me just make sure there's no other command that makes more sense. Okay, yeah, that sounds like it should be right. So Python manage.py shell. Okay, so see, we're in the Python shell. And this is kind of like if you ever use Rails, when you use like Rails console. So here it's taking you into a Python shell. You can run Python commands, but all your models have been preloaded. That's what's unique here. I could have just typed in Python and gone to the Python console, but then my objects wouldn't have been preloaded. So now I should be able to create a to-do. Okay, so I can be like object. So I can do to-do dot objects, and this is something I always found kind of annoying. The way every model works is that the models have a sub object called, it's called the object manager, and it's called object. So it's like the model dot objects, and then that's where all like the create, update kind of functions are at. So it'd be like to do dot objects create, and it's going to be item equals eat breakfast. Okay, and then I hit enter there. What I did not like, name to do is not defined. Okay. Okay, we'll try that again a little bit later. Here's some still steps I need to do. So exit as a function to get out of this. What I can do instead is I'll just do the db shell, and we'll just add an item manually. db shell. So now I'm in the SQLite 3 console, and I can type in .help to see like all the commands for SQL, or like all the commands for SQLite 3 specifically. What I'd like to see is a list of tables. Just make sure the table exists. So right here, tables. Okay. Show the current values for various settings. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So dot show tables. Did I do that wrong? Dot show. Oh, it's just dot tables. Dot tables. And there we go. So there we should see the to do. There it is, API to do, and that's the way it names tables. It's going to basically name it based on the app name. So see, the app has a model of to do, and so the API app gets a table called API to do. Okay. And then I can now insert a record in there. And let me just actually remember how to use. It's been a while since I've done SQL. So SQL insert. There we go. So insert into table name. There we go. Got it. Okay. So again, this is an SQL, so you would use SQL to send commands. So it'd be like insert into API to do. And then I just have to specify like what fields am I specifying. So item, there's only one field. And then the values of that are going to be eat breakfast. And I can actually enter multiple to-dos, so I can just do a comma and do another one. So that way I don't have to type this all out again. Eat lunch. And then eat dinner. And then you have to end you always have to end your SQL commands with a semicolon. Okay. Well, didn't like that. Let's try another semicolon. Insert into. Let me go back to here. Oh, okay. I see. I should have done it all. Oh, that's right. Just do one at a time. Control X. There we go. Then that was unsuccessful. So let's try that again. Python manage v shell insert into API to do values eat breakfast. There's two columns. But yeah, that would be the ID, but was the ID not set up as automatic? Let's see here. So we can see from API to do, select all. From. Oh no, I did that backwards. Select all from API to do. Yeah, there's nothing in there. I was hoping it'd at least show me the fields. I'm assuming. Let's see here. Let's do dot help. Okay, I'm assuming Django doesn't automatically set up these tables to have an automatic incrementing ID, so that's annoying. So we'll just exit for now. But the point is you could play around with this. Okay. Okay. Cool. So we're out. I just did a Control C there. But yeah, so we migrated our model. I'm going to stop this video. So we created, all we did was create our model. And I'll see you guys in the next video.